So my first meeting this morning was at 7:30
Oh
a.m.
my God.
Wow.
Another one?
Wow, you're warmed up. Oh my.
Yeah, who calls meetings at 7:30 in the morning?
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Alright.
great.
Maybe with New York.
Yeah.
All right. call to
Oh, that's
order,
better.
And,
Yeah, so you're
Look
not
at my
so
elbow room.
squished
That's good.
behind the door.
I like talking, you
so
know.
the first thing is
So we
the
can see
approval,
you.
the approval of, the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah.
So did everyone read the draft minutes? Anyone read the draft minutes?
Thank you for the very detailed.
Wow,
minutes.
these are
That's
amazing.
nice.
Astrid,
Because
she
it's
walked in
good.
earlier, she works really hard on these, so.
How
Get
much
these for
time
council
did
meetings, that would be
So you
great.
have to, basically the rule of thumb is it takes twice as long as the meeting to do this level of
Really?
detail.
Wow, that's short. You
Yeah.
should be able to.
I think it takes her a little bit longer than that,
Longer,
because she
yeah.
has to then decide, kind of
You need to
summarize
decide,
what
yeah.
somebody is saying.
It's really nice to capture what TPA says.
Right, so that's a
because I
specific
can't
thing we
remember
try to do.
everything.
If they say anything about a bill, we pretty much write it all down.
Mm.
Just so the public has that information.
Oh, that's great.
And I am recording audio for the purpose of the minutes, just so everyone.
Okay.
I think it has to do with the justification, when it's what's that one called when it tries to expand it to the whole page, it gets a little funny
But it's
sometimes.
not.
I know, so
it's not aligned to the right. If you
I'll
do
have her,
that,
I'll have her look at it,
yeah.
if
probably
that's a
font.
formatting
Maybe
issue.
it's accidental issues.
Yeah.
Font.
I'll have her check. Thank you.
So did we take a position on AB 1487? I
No.
don't believe so.
I thought we have that on the agenda, but it's not.
No, we haven't
Sorry,
talked
I
about
didn't read that.
constitutionality, but.
I didn't read the carefully enough. I scanned it, I thought, oh, there is a.
Okay.
1487.
All right, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
All right, I'll make the motion. in a second. And since the two of us are voting, that's fine. Okay, so now we can go to the, first let's do oral communications. So two.
Did you have another?
I do have oral communications, but I have a question, which is whether it really goes under orals, because I wanna talk about the ADUs, or if it goes under item 2 or something. It's a general comment as opposed to going, well, not
You
general.
can do under
You can
oral.
do
Yeah, you can.
Why don't I
Cause it's not
Okay.
specifically agendized for ADUs. so.
Okay.
Oh, okay, it was just a separate, okay, thanks, okay.
All right, so you wanna go first then? Okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
Sure. The reason that I wanted to talk today about ADUs specifically is because I
Could you
noted.
sorry, could you say
Oh,
your
I'm
name?
sorry, my name is Connie Cunningham. I'm Cupertino resident. I'm on the Housing Commission, but I'm speaking for self only this morning. Okay, and what I was noticing on the AB 68, which is a bill that supports, ADU, I noticed that of the 3 that we have taken a position on for the city, that is one that, retains the city's authority to require owner occupancy requirements for the ADUs and the junior ADUs, while the others do not. So I thought that was a very important distinction amongst those 3 bills. And I thought that, if we were to change our, oppose to support, or maybe support with amendment or whatever, cause I'm speaking only to that particular piece of it, that it would help legislatures with specifics, if, as far as when they're thinking about what they wanna do for the state as a whole. It would set a, perhaps a positive tone. It's something that we're working on for the city to for the things that we would like to have happen. So, and an attractive thing about AB 68 is it does allow the junior ADUs, which is then allows more flexibility for homeowners to choose the sizes and types that, they want. The junior ADUs are much smaller and less expensive. And it also, says right in it that they do not consider ADUs or junior ADUs to be new residential units for purposes of calculating, connection fees or capacity charges. So those are among the things that, I thought were something positive that, and I'm not sure which part we're opposing. I'm not that much into it, but I did wanna highlight the fact that they do retain the city's authority to require owner occupancy.
Okay,
So that was my main point.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer.
How are we doing, we have oral and then if we wanted to comment on each
Right, you can do it,
section.
right, you can do it again.
Oh,
All
we
right.
can talk again.
Okay, we can talk again. We shall talk again. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and, I brought this up at the city council meeting recently where there are quite a number of things that have come down from Sacramento bill-wise in the last couple of years, which I am wondering, a lot of people in California are wondering where the state is going with taking away local control and having Sacramento run things. And I think that we need to have I would call it future planning, aggressive future planning, because we need to make sure that we're not just throwing things out like SB 330 would throw out any types of local environmental control. It's trying to get rid of the Coastal Commission. You can't just freeze planning when you're building things in a city. I'm picking 330 out specifically because to me, it is not like a bill in reality. I can understand what they're trying to do, but if you're trying to plan for a city at a very, very local area, when we're having problems with sea rise, we're having problems with warming, with building homes in areas that can burn, you can't just throw out environmental law, which to me is what 330 is trying to do. It's blindly building, and you can't do that. You can't blindly build in Santa Cruz, or you will have slope failure. You can't blindly build a 20-story building on the seacoast because you will have erosion and failure. We have tsunamis now, if people aren't aware of it. So we need, and also too, the control is being taken away from the state, from the city level, which is traditionally where it has been administered, city and county for unincorporated. And they're trying to have Sacramento do all this planning. Well, that isn't a reality. And in the process, the cities are having to come back, and the counties, and say, hey, we have to do our own planning because Sacramento can't do Big Brother and babysit us. I don't want them to, but you can't just abandon environmental control or planning and the load on the cities, the streets. 330 does not look at that, it's just build, baby, build. And so I call that aggressive future planning. What are these bills going to do to our city infrastructure, overload our streets? What happens to our schools? What happens to our fire departments? You can't close fire departments if you have aggressive house building. So I think that that's something we need. It's the overload of local resources that would be controlled at the Sacramento level, and Sacramento has enough problems of its own. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly 3 minutes, 5 seconds. Okay, no more oral. We can move on to our agenda items. So legislative updates.
So do you not wanna do public comment or your
Oh, on
interview?
which?
Cause you guys had wanted the meeting to be structured so that you take public comment on all the items in advance.
Oh.
You can choose,
Oh, that's
it's
true.
within
Right.
your
Yeah, no,
discretion to change.
you're right, I forgot about that.
We
Wow.
were trying to save the time with
This
the
is a lighter
tax
agenda.
expense
Right, this is my, I think we
So
can just,
initially we
normal.
thought we
Yeah.
would, if the public has comment on specific bills we are considering today, we can take those meetings.
yeah, let's do it back, let's go back since we only have.
Just for this
yeah.
one, but would you like me to continue to have this available if you need it?
Yeah,
I'll print it
okay.
like this, okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. So, Casey, we're moving on to action item number 2. Legislative update?
Perfect. Good Good morning, everyone. This is Casey from Townsend Public Affairs. Wanted just to provide you guys with a brief update of kind of what's been going on in Sacramento since we last met. The legislature is currently on summer recess. They left after July 12th, and they'll be back in session on August 12th. When they come back, they'll have a quick sprint before they adjourn on September 13th. So when the legislature comes back, the focus will be moving bills out of the Appropriations Committee and then taking the final Assembly and Senate floor votes before the end of session. I included in the update just a summary of some of the major provisions that were included in the state budget. Since we last met, the legislature has finished the work on the main state budget bill, which was passed by the legislature prior to the constitutional deadline of June 15th. But they've since completed the bulk of their work on the trailer bills, which are essentially the policy that implement all of the provisions within the budget. There may still be one or two trailer bills that trickle through at the end of session, but for the most part, the budget's been done. You can see in the staff report included a number of items, kind of tried to break it down by item, by major topic, including housing, homelessness, education, healthcare, drinking water, natural resources, so on. In addition to the budget work, before the legislature left on recess, a primary focus was moving bills through policy committee. So I've also included an update on the status of the bills that the city's taken a position on. For the most part, all of the housing related bills are still moving. They've moved out of committee and are moving over to Appropriations Committee for consideration of their fiscal impacts. Most of those bills are going through as is. Some took some minor amendments, but overall the bills are still pretty much intact. There are some things that were good to see, such as SB 592 was amended to remove compensatory damages. Some of the ADU bills were amended slightly to kind of mirror each other more closely, but again, not a lot of huge developments on those measures. And then I heard you mention earlier there is a brief update regarding AB 1487. There's still going to be a lot of work done on that measure here at the end of session. As you may be aware, the legislature, particularly Senator McGuire, in Governance and Finance Committee, and Assemblymember Chu, the bill's author, wanted ABAG and MTC to work to come up with a set of amendments that could then be amended into the bill when the legislature returns. I believe that ABAG approved the summary sheet last week, and it may be in front of MTC this week.
I went to that meeting, so it looks like that bill's been, heavily gutted and redlined. There's not much left to it.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the way the legislature essentially wanted to do it was, as you mentioned, they pretty much pulled everything out of the bill with the understanding that ABAG and MTC would be considering and potentially approving provisions, and those provisions will be amended back into the bill when the legislature returns into session. Yeah. If that bill makes it out of Appropriations Committee, it will be referred back to Policy Committee.
So I have one quick question.
Again, with the new provisions.
So when the appropriations considers fiscal impact, that is fiscal impact to the state, right? They don't look at the fiscal impact to the cities, do they?
Correct. For the most part, they are concerned with the fiscal impacts to the state. They will, depending upon what local impacts are and how those local impacts may impact the state, there might be some look, but the Appropriations Committee, you're correct, their primary concern is what the fiscal impact is to the state. That's not to say that they don't hold bills that have minimal fiscal impact or have large local impact. They may do it in a broader, but technically their purview is supposed to be state fiscal impact.
Right, okay, thank you.
So on 1487, just to kind of wrap that up, so on process-wise, like I said, that bill should be amended. I would assume that in the first day or two that the legislature is back in session. I would assume that bill would then go on appropriations suspense calendar, which will be taken up at the end of August. And then if it moves off of suspense, it would go back to Senate Governance and Finance and potentially Senate Housing Committee before it goes to the Senate floor. If it goes to the Senate floor and it is approved there, then it has to go back to the Assembly, where it'll likely be heard in committee again and on the floor again. So it has a lot of steps left.
Okay,
And those are, I obviously happy to answer any specific questions. I know there's a lot of information in the update, so that was kind of a high level overview, but happy to answer any specific questions on items there.
So we had a question from public comment about AB 67. Could you clarify whether AB 68, AB 68, does that have the ownership requirement to or not?
I believe that they all three of the bills, I believe, waive the owner occupancy requirement. AB 881 and SB 13. AB 881 is just a 5-year waiving of the provisions, and SB 13 is going to be amended to do the same thing. I am looking through. I feel like AB 68 also waives owner occupancy.
This is Alex. That's my understanding as well, that all three of the bills waive owner occupancy. However, as Casey said, AB 881 and SB 13 doesn't sunset that provision after 5 years. My understanding is that AB 68 is the only one that does not contain a sunset provision. So that would waive owner occupancy just going forward.
Sorry, can you repeat that last sentence?
Apologies, I am mobile today, so I am on my cell phone. So if you can't hear me, I apologize.
Oh, no, you're
But
fine. It was
the
perfect.
last comment was that AB 68 is the only one that does not include a sunset provision. So while the other two would sunset the owner occupancy after 5 years, AB 68 would not.
wait, so AB 68 would never require owner occupancy or would always require it?
It never requires it.
Okay. Okay,
So I am looking at Bill AB 68 amended July 5th. In the bill text, under section, I don't know how to read this. So there is a section that says, a local agency may require owner occupancy for either the primary dwelling or the accessory dwelling units on a single family lot, subject to the requirements of paragraph 6 of Division A.
yeah, I'm looking at
Is
that.
that applicable only to
Right, I'm looking at this section 6585.2.22, and it says, require owner occupancy in the single-family residence in which the junior ADU will be permitted, and the owner can reside in either side, either one, the ADU or the,
It says it in both places.
or the main unit.
This was where I was reading from, and the paragraph is.
So now I'm confused if you're saying it's not, I mean, maybe it doesn't require it, but a city can still require
I'm
it.
sorry, it's 6-6.
Yeah, we can go back and get clarity, because I'm looking back at the 6A, the A6, where the reference on the code section that the vice mayor cited.
Yeah, the one I cited is E1D4. That's a section. But I did remember
Right.
that what I read earlier was this bill will forbid cities from requiring ownership. That was, I think, American Planning Association analysis. But I don't know if they have amended the bill. That was much earlier when I read that analysis.
Yeah, and we can go back and look, because like I said, that section that you're citing refers back to another portion of the bill, which does have maximum standards that local agencies can use to evaluate, and they may require that an applicant for a permit be an owner occupant, or that the property may be used for rentals for longer than 30 days. So yeah, there's all kinds of cross references. We can definitely get you, after this meeting, get you over an email that kind of goes through all those cross references. So, because I think that all three of the bills, at the way they're written currently, are slightly different. Because I know 13 is going to be amended to mirror 881, which has the 5-year sunset, and then, like I said, 68 has this kind of cross reference over. Either way, on all three of the bills, we have been communicating to the authors and to the committees that we think there should be that a city should be allowed to have owner occupancy built into their local guidelines. So I think the messaging that we've been delivering on all three of the bills is consistent.
So for AB 68, what's the main idea for this bill? What's the main thing they want to introduce that's different from the other bills?
I mean, I think essentially all three of the bills are trying to get at the same thing, just to try to streamline and facilitate building of ADUs and really try to limit the conditions on which a local jurisdiction can impose for ADUs. So a lot of the focus on all three of these bills, again, is kind of getting removal of parking